Welcome to Movie Magic 96, your one-stop shop for all things movies. From reviews, unboxings, and collections, I'm here to celebrate the magic of cinema. Now, let's roll the film. Today I'm going to be talking about Season 1 of Ted Lasso. Now, I don't have any England soccer jerseys, but as you can see, I have my Diego Maradona Argentina jersey, which is also blue, and was the closest thing I had to fit the spirit of this video. But first, a brief backstory. My parents had watched Ted Lasso before and are rewatching it with me for my first time watch. If you don't know the backstory, the show is about main character Ted Lasso, who is an American football coach hired to manage an English soccer team. But the owner secretly hopes his inexperience will lead it to failure. However, his positive leadership proves effective. Might I say that is a phenomenal idea for a TV show. A little bit about the cast. Jason Sudeikis developed, produced, and starred in this series. I haven't seen many Jason Sudeikis projects, but loved him in 2013's We're the Millers. The only other person I recognized in this show was Juno Temple, from miniseries The Offer on Paramount+. Let's get into it. Episode 1. The pilot starts off with Rebecca Welton taking over ownership of English Premier Football Club AFC Richmond. She acquired the club through her divorce from her unfaithful husband. She then hires Ted Lasso, who is a college American football coach and knows nothing about soccer. Once Ted and Coach Beard arrive in England, he doesn't get the support of the team members, owner, or fans. Personally, I'm an American and know more about American football than soccer. So I love how they treat Ted like a fish out of water. And yet, he does everything with positivity and no fear. There are many culture-clashing jokes that work well for an American audience and an English audience as well. An example is when Ted tries tea and is disgusted and also spits out his sparkling water at the press conference. We are then introduced to Roy, who is the veteran captain of the team and is, for lack of a better term, a hard ass. Also Jamie, who is the best goal scorer on the team, but isn't much of a team player. At the end of the episode, we see Ted call home to his kid and wife, but don't get to hear them on the other end of the phone, which is an odd choice to me. Ted says he loves you to his wife, but she won't say it back. Now, this was a great pilot episode. It introduced the characters well and sets up the story and goal of the show, pun intended. Episode 2. We see Ted bringing Rebecca biscuits, and as an American, I didn't know that's what they called cookies in England. She tries to decline his offer, but as she tries them, she says they are the best she's ever had. Ted tries to connect with the players with an anonymous collection box, but it just ends up in the players insulting him. We find out Sam misses his home of Nigeria, and so Ted collects money from the players to get him a gift and later throw him a birthday party. After a second press conference, a reporter talks about Rebecca's ex-husband having more mistresses than she had known of. This upsets Rebecca, so Ted attempts to comfort her by bringing a care package his son had sent to him. He leaves her with a green army men figure, which he states is her first line of defense, which is such a kind gesture. Ted then finds Keeley at a photo shoot and asks about how he can talk to Jamie to get through to him. She says he needs positive reinforcement. We see the first game where AFC Richmond lose to Crystal Palace 4-1. After the game, Ted gives great advice to Jamie, which again shows how he can bring out the best in others. Roy notices the water pressure has been fixed, and it's a tiny way to show the players he is trying to win them over. News reporter Trent waits for Jamie to come out of the locker room and asks him a question. Although Jamie starts to give a professional answer, he then reverts to his old ways and tells them they are having a party even after their awful loss. We find out Rebecca made Higgins take the pictures and wants to leak the photos. At the end of the episode, Ted is shown making the biscuits. Overall, another great episode. We learn more about Sam, Jamie, and Rebecca, but it's sad to see how bad Ted is treated. Episode 3. Rebecca reads the newspaper, eagerly awaiting the leaked pictures of Ted and Keeley, but notices it isn't in them. Ted and Coach Beard have no clue how to jump back from the loss to Crystal Palace, so Nate suggests a play, using Jamie as a decoy, that Ted later uses in practice. Keeley tells Ted about the pictures, and they go to Rebecca to have her try and stop them from being released. Rebecca and Higgins agree to stop the pictures from being shown to the public, but only because they are in fear of being outed as the ones behind them. Later, we see the players picking on Nate, which Roy then tells Ted about. Ted decides not to interfere, opting for Nate to work it out on his own. Reporter Trent gets the opportunity to interview Ted as an agreement through Rebecca for having not run the pictures from the last episode. Now, Trent is the opposite of Ted. He is a complete cynic. Keeley brings Rebecca a gift for having the photo stopped from being shown, and we get a moment of them bonding together in her office. Ted goes to a local school and brings Trent and Roy along. And we get to see a moment of softness from Roy as he plays soccer outside with the kids, and we also meet his niece at the school. Ted and Trent go to an Indian restaurant that the driver from the airport works as a waiter. Higgins reads a copy of the finished article on Ted to Rebecca, and it ends up being positive. We then see Roy at a club where Jamie, Keeley, and his friends are, and Roy headbutts one of Jamie's friends. This seems like the only way he'll get them to stop messing with Nate, since talking to Jamie about it didn't work earlier on. No issues again with the episode. The funniest part was when we see Roy reading a book, A Wrinkle in Time. Ted had given him the book, as it is about a young girl's struggle with leadership, and then he lets out a loud "fuck" while reading the book to his little niece. Episode 4. We open with the team losing a game and see Roy and Jamie fighting in the locker room over Jamie being mean to Sam on the field. Rebecca is organizing an event to raise money for children, and Ted asks if he can seat Jamie and Roy together so they can work out their differences. Ted brings Nate as his +1 and even gets him a better fitting suit. On the carpet prior to the event, Rebecca looks nervous, so Keeley whispers advice in her ear and cheers her on behind the paparazzi. I love seeing these two characters' relationships develop over time. Rupert, who is Rebecca's ex-husband, makes a surprise appearance at the event. He makes a rude comment putting Rebecca down. Ted finds Rebecca visibly upset, so he consoles her. At the bar, Jamie and Roy put their differences aside for a moment and have a bonding moment. In the bathroom, Rebecca informs Keeley that Jamie invited the woman who was bidding on him. Keeley breaks up with Jamie after his actions, and he doesn't seem to care. We get to see huge growth from Keeley, Rebecca, Roy, and Jamie in this episode. Episode 5. Ted confides in Rebecca about his issues with his wife, and we see Ted's son and wife come to visit. Keeley set up a photo shoot for Jamie, and seeing her efforts, Rebecca offers her a job. We then find out Michelle doesn't love Ted anymore, but she'll continue to try. During their game, Jamie scores a goal, but his celebration is all about himself, which angers Roy. Jamie then scores a second goal to tie the game and continues to not care about the team, so Ted benches him. AFC Richmond goes on to win the game without Jamie by playing as a team. Before Michelle and Henry leave, Ted tells his wife she doesn't have to try anymore, and he'll be okay without her. Now, this really put the drama into the episode and is heartbreaking to watch. I couldn't imagine being married and having a kid with someone, and then my wife loses feelings. You really feel the emotional weight on Ted's shoulders. Episode 6. In a press conference after the win, reporters ask Ted what he will do with Jamie, and he doesn't take a stand on whether he'll play or sit. In the locker room, Jamie lies and says he is hurt and can't practice, and for the first time we see Ted angry. He goes on to state the iconic practice speech that Allen Iverson said to reporters in 2002. We then get to meet Danny Rojas, who is so enthusiastic and a joy to watch. I love how he says his name repeatedly, like a Pokemon. Unfortunately, Danny Rojas injures himself during a routine dribbling drill. The players believe since he was in the treatment room, which they think is cursed, that that's how he got injured. At the pub, there was an old poster trying to get players to sign up for the team, but it was a trick to get men to join the army. Unfortunately, they had their physicals in the training room, and some went on to die in World War I. Ted tells the team that they can reverse the curse if they bring something personal to sacrifice. Fortunately, Danny Rojas, I have to say his whole name at the time, recovers from his injury. Jamie was sent back to Manchester City, who he had been on loan with, and since he wasn't playing for Richmond, they could call him back. Ted is visibly upset. Now, to me, the best joke of the episode is when Higgins' cat's name we find out was Cindy Clawford. Episode 7. The team prepares for an away game versus Liverpool, and Ted gets a FaceTime from his wife, Michelle, who asks him to sign the divorce papers. Rebecca invites Keeley on the trip instead of Higgins, who usually comes. Sassy, who is Rebecca's old friend, makes a surprise visit at the hotel. Ted gets a text from Michelle, again, asking about the separation paperwork. We learn from Sassy telling Keeley that Rebecca has changed since her divorce. She used to be much kinder, would even sing, and that sets us up later in the episode. Ted is having a hard time signing the divorce papers, as we see him drinking and disheveled in his hotel room. Nate gives the team pregame talk after Ted coerces him about his thoughts the night before. Nate's comments are honest and hurtful, but play off in a motivating, laughing manner. Now, we don't see the game, which to me is a good choice because it shows the audience that this is bigger than soccer. Richmond beats Liverpool for the first time in 60 years, with Roy scoring the solo goal. During their celebration at a local karaoke bar, Ted has a panic attack, and Rebecca finds him outside and confronts him just as Ted did a few episodes prior. Ted finally signs his divorce papers. Roy and Keeley share a kiss. Rebecca sleeps with the waiter from the restaurant, and Ted sleeps with Sassy. Now, this episode hits with a lot of relationship growth and emotional drama, and it makes the characters more relatable and likable. Episode 8 is titled The Diamond Dogs, which is a nod to London-born singer David Bowie, who has an album and song of the same name. We see the aftermath of last week's episode, confirming Ted slept with Sassy and Rebecca slept with the waiter. Ted is visibly awkward around Sassy, as he is still processing his divorce and hasn't been with another woman other than his ex-wife for a long time. Keeley asks Roy if he wants coffee so they can discuss their kiss, but Roy simply says he's busy. It's clear that Roy has a hard time opening up. Ted, Nate, Beard, and Higgins have a heart-to-heart and share relationship advice to Ted in his office. Jamie surprisingly shows up to Keeley's house, and they end up sleeping together. The next day, Roy asks Keeley on a date, and that completely confuses her, as Roy ignored her in their last 2 meetings. Roy finally opens up and says he wants to take things slow, and Keeley accepts his offer. The Diamond Dogs are reunited to help Roy with his relationship issues, and I love how Roy doesn't talk but just gives a huh when he's upset. The next scene at the pub, we find out Rupert bought out the Milk Sisters share of the club, and he's engaged to a much younger woman, also named Rebecca. Rupert tests Ted to a game of darts, and if he wins, he can pick the lineups for the last 2 games of the season, but if Ted wins, he would not let Rupert sit in the owner's box for the upcoming games. Roy and Keeley go on their date, but a paparazzi takes their photo, so Roy takes his memory card out of the camera. Ted beats Rupert in the dart game. Suck it, Rupert. Higgins tells Rebecca there are 10,000 unsold seats for the next game, and she says sell them to the opposing team's fans. Now, for me, this really bothered me because with her character, it seems like we're on a swing set going back and forth. 1 minute she's nice, and the next minute she's mean. To me, it should be a gradual progression in character development. It seems like we hit a milestone in the last episode with her comforting Ted, but as of now, she still hates her ex-husband more than she likes Ted, the club, or his peers. Episode 9 is titled All Apologies, which is a nod to Nirvana's 1993 song of the same name. We see Roy sulking after he played poorly in the last match. Keeley tells Rebecca she has to tell Ted that she was the one who hired the paparazzi to take his and Keeley's photo earlier on in the season. Coach Beard and Nate tell Ted he should bench Roy, but Ted disagrees. Rebecca tries to tell Ted about her plan of ruining the team, but ends up getting cold feet. But after her ex-husband visits her office and gives her more awful news, she finally comes clean to Ted, and he accepts her apology on the notion that divorce is hard. Roy doesn't take the information kindly when Ted tries to tell him that he won't be starting next game. Rebecca goes to Higgins' house and asks him to come back to the club, which he agrees after hearing she told Ted about everything that went on behind his back this season. For the first time, we see Coach Beard raise his voice when Ted walks back his idea of benching Roy. But after Roy visits Ted's home and they talk about it, he finally comes to terms with not starting in the last game. Now, this episode is a great setup for the season finale, and right as it ended, I went straight into the last episode in the season is called The Hope That Kills You, which, if you are a New York Mets or a New Jersey Devils fan like me, you can totally relate to. Nick gets promoted to an assistant coach, which is such a huge character development for him since the beginning of the season. The team watches a clip of their ex-player Jamie talk down on his former club. Later, Nate and Beard state that there's no way that they can beat Man City. So, Ted asks his players to teach him about their trick plays that will catch the defense off guard. Jamie stops by Keeley's house and learns that Ted was never out to get him. Now, it's a draw 0-0 at halftime, but after a penalty, Man City scores, making it 1-0. Roy makes a sliding tackle on ex-teammate Jamie Tart and prevents another goal, but injures himself in the process. The fans in the stadium simultaneously check their phones and see that Crystal Palace won 6-0, meaning Richmond only needs to tie the game to keep it from being relegated to the league below. Richmond executes a play looking like an American football team, which was fun to watch, and then Danny Rojas scores a goal. However, Jamie takes the ball down the field, making the extra pass, and Man City scores, winning the game. There were a couple things that bothered me in this episode. It's not the fact that Richmond lost, but having Crystal Palace overcome the impossible task of having to win 6-0 was too much. And then having Danny Rojas score, all for it to be nothing, was heartbreaking. I guess that's the idea, though. Ted finds Jamie getting yelled at by his dad for having passed the ball instead of shooting it himself. And later we see Coach Beard giving Jamie a note from Ted praising him for doing the same thing. One last thing we find out, Rebecca won't be firing Ted, and he'll be back next season, which to me is a hint that Jamie will return to AFC next season, along as Ted. So who is your favorite character, and what is your favorite episode of Season 1 of Ted Lasso? I'd say Roy is my favorite other than Ted, and Tailines, or Episode 5, was the best. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, check me out on Letterboxd and Instagram at MovieMagic1996. Thank you so much for watching, and go watch a movie today.